everybody, and welcome to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie here on Black Star Network. And we are excited each and every time that we get to join you. This month, we're talking about those male figures in our lives, our fathers, our father figures, men in our lives who have played the role as dad. And so as we begin our dialogue and conversation today, think on those things. Some things make us happy. Some things make us sad. Some promises have been broken, but all in all, we have survived and become the amazing people that we are today. We are joined today by Reverend Deborah Bell, our wellness coach and mental health strategist, as well as Charlotte Avely, our family life strategist. Welcome in, ladies.
Hello, hello.
Hey. Oh my goodness. When I think about the women that we've become and the men in our lives, minus our husbands, those father type figures, or the father figures in our lives, that word, man, it can be a deep word and it can be a heavy word sometimes when you think about, what is fatherhood? And what does it mean to the people, not only who are watching, but those who have fathers, those who've lost a father, those who've had men as surrogates just kind of step into their lives. I'll start with Charlotte because, she's married to one, mom of a fur baby, mom of how many, Charlotte? Seven. I want to give you more kids because you're like community mom as well. But then there's Mr. Avery in the picture. And so what does fatherhood mean in a family your size?
Oh my gosh. So, in our family, and like you said, we had, I'm the wife of one, mom of seven, the owner of one fur baby named Blue. And fatherhood for us, even specifically for me, it means partnership. It means presence over presence. Did you catch that? It means teamwork, making the dream work, because that's what we do in our house. I mean, you can't have a family our size and not be able to, make teamwork happen. It has to happen because without it, we would just really fall apart. So really fatherhood, it also means friendship. It means accountability. It means having a strong force. I'm a strong force, but it's different when you have the male energy. It means, learning and growing together. Because even as a father, my husband, he's been a father now for, over 21 years, but he's still learning and he's still growing. As our children are learning and growing up, he's learning and growing too, because we have children who are in several different seasons of life. I mean, we have two emerging adults that are in college. We have one getting ready to go. We have, several other in high school, and we have an elementary schooler. So even in dealing in all of those seasons of life, he has to really remember the season, knowing that all of our children have their own bent and recognizing what his role is in their particular lives, in their particular season of life, individually and collectively.
I think you bring up a very interesting question, Charlotte, because you have that evolution of the man right before your eyes, especially people who marry young, who date early. They see all these different evolutions or components of a person's growth. How does that impact you as a wife as it relates to fatherhood and seeing your husband grow differently and that acceptance? Because oftentimes I hear people say, oh, we grew apart. But isn't that what we're supposed to do? So how does that manifest itself in the home and how you all relate to each other in a man's season of growth? Because it definitely looks different in a woman's season of growth.
Oh, absolutely. So I can tell you that who my husband is now is not who he was when we first got married or before he became a father. And fatherhood has changed him as we've been married. I mean, we'll be married we'll be married 23 years this month, actually. But it's really something to see because he has had to learn and grow. And I've had to learn and grow and know my role in letting him be who he is as a father. There are some times when I've had to step back. There are some things that he said or done that I've kind of had to make him think about, like, you know what? Is there a different way that you could have said that? And us still being that team, knowing that I'm not downing who he is as a man or a father, but we get to make each other, iron sharpens iron. And so we get to help each other learn and grow as we're growing in parenthood. And for him, to see him, as he was, as, when our children were much smaller, and now to see who he is as our children are becoming, emerging adults and all of the things, it really is something. And it can be hard. It can be hard for me, especially with our boys, because, moms nurture and we do all the things. And yet at the same time, I have to realize that as a man, there are lessons that my husband has to teach my son as a man. So him being present in their lives and even in the lives of our children, but how it works as far as male energy, it really, really matters. And so I appreciate that so much in him, but also I appreciate it from the standpoint that when my parents were married, my parents got divorced when I was 8 years old. So, it's a blessing to be able to see my children have a father figure in the house that I didn't get to see that. I didn't have that growing up. And so it's beautiful, and I appreciate it. It can be frustrating sometimes, but I just have to remember who I am and who he is in their lives.
That is completely understandable. Deborah, from your perspective and the work that you do, because you're Reverend, you see fatherhood in a variety of perspectives, being a mom to a son, bonus son, all of those things in your life. How do we navigate that spiritual growth of a man? Because then there's because we're a Black show, I'm gonna say, so we got Black male energy, and then we got spiritual Black male energy. And then oftentimes, like, how do we marry our street side of our husband with our faith side of the men in our lives? Because sometimes we're like, hold up, wait a minute, so how do we blend those things, from that perspective of faith and family and fatherhood?
That's really a loaded question. I think that it takes patience, because I remember growing up, and one of the idioms my aunt used to say all the time was, you have to allow people to be who they are, right? And even whether it's in marriage, whether it's in a work environment, whether it is uncle, whoever the male person is in your life, you have to, for women, take a step back. Now, I'm speaking from the experience of coming from a family background where the women are very strong, very outspoken. We are the doers. We are give it to them, they'll get it done. And sometimes, even if you don't give it to us, we'll take it and get it done because we see that it needs doing. And so in that environment, I've been able to watch my cousins and my uncles throughout the years develop and come from, as you say, that street environment into a more spiritual Christian environment. And as women, we've had to, in my family in particular, just take a step back for a moment and allow them to be who they are. Because we can tell, we're accustomed to ordering people around and telling them what to do, right? And so we're good at that. But for the male in our environments, there are times when that female strong woman energy has to take a back seat, yes, or step to the side, because it can be so overbearing and even shut a man down. Shut him down to the point of, oh, you're just not going to listen, so I'm going to stop talking. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're just going to do what you want to do, so I'm just going to step aside and allow you to do that. So in coming to the place where Charlotte talked about, in working together and seeing the male presence grow and mature and began to take their rightful place. And I really think that may sound like an very old system of taking places in society, but I believe there is a place for men in our society, and often we have just not allowed them to be who they are, because some of them won't fight for it. They'll just continue to do what they do. So being patient, being cognizant of who they really are, and taking time, again, stepping aside and allowing them to be who they are. That sets an expectation, right? Mm-hmm. That you're expecting that male figure to step up, to step out, to be who they really are. And that can be a transition for many of them. You know, it's often said that mothers really over-mother their sons. Charlotte talked about the difference a male figure in the home makes for young men. There are things that fathers teach that a mother can't teach in the same way. So I think that it's a valid point to step aside and allow him to be who he is.
I hope that our audience was taking notes. When we come back after the break, I want to unpack that just a little bit, because when you think about it, there are times that women overstep their boundaries. And I have to ask the question, do we take the manhood out of our men? When we're back after the break.
Let's go. Truth Talks is the fastest growing show about pop culture, and now we're exclusively on our own channel.
Go ahead, say it, man.
Attention! We're back.
We gotta stop letting this slide.
Bigger and stronger than ever.
I mean, I just have questions.
Season 2 is reloading May 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
What's up?
With new hosts.
Let me tell you what damn time it is.
And big celebrity surprises.
Kiss my behind is Oprah Winfrey.
Subscribe today at Truth Talks Live.
Give black people what they need, and we'll show them for you.
And don't miss out on all the upcoming viral moments.
Simulcasting weeknights at 8 p.m. on Roland Martin Unfiltered and Black Star Network and Truth Talks Live.
I'll see you there.
Welcome back, everyone. And as you can tell, we're talking about faith, family, and fatherhood. And there are a variety of men who play that role in our lives. And I want to invite to this conversation some of the things that we've been talking about. I kind of want to unpack, because there is some wounding, wounding, wounding that happens when women overstep, almost to the point where men, like Deb said, you just gonna keep talking, so I'm gonna stop listening. Or, woman, can you just let me be the man for a minute? I have heard this, and all of us in our professions, you know, we have heard these types of conversations. Charlotte, let's unpack that for a moment. Because when men exclaim that they feel as if their manhood is being taken from them because women are, I'll handle it, I got it. Or there's the man who acquiesces their leadership in the home to the woman because maybe the subject matter is too sensitive and they don't want to discipline the daughter, or they don't want to discipline the son. They oftentimes turn over that power. And we all know what happens when you give us the power. So, Charlotte, how do we, and I know we're talking about fatherhood, but for the men who are listening, hear us well. We know how to help healing happen the same way we make wounding happen. So, Charlotte, how do we step in to right some of our wrongs and heal those relationships so that fathering can take place in the home?
Woo, that is a really, really good question. And it really hits home for me because, you know, early on, I was very much I have a very strong personality, but early on in our marriage, really for like the first 5, maybe 10 years, I was a yeller. I was a very strong presence, but I utilized my voice and I utilized it. I weaponized it. I did a lot of, I was really doing the most, right? And a lot of it was out of control. A lot of it was feeling inadequate. A lot of it was out of exhaustion. And a lot of it was, no, I want you to do what I want you to do. And so, I had to, when I came to that realization, when I wrote the 40-day tone of voice tone down, when I came to the realization of the damage that I had done, the first thing that I had to do was, one, I had to recognize the wounds that I caused. And after recognizing those wounds, I had to really pull my husband to the side and have a separate conversation before I had a joint conversation with my children to let him know that I recognized the wounding that I had done. I recognized the why behind why I had done the wounding, and I had to really apologize. I had to apologize with my whole heart, like the ugly cry, like all the snot and tears and everything, because it was a point when I came to myself. But at that point, when I actually was able to say, you know what, babe, I apologize for doing this, this, and this. I apologize for yelling. I apologize for slamming the door. I apologize for sometimes stepping in and being so strong that it felt like I was emasculating you. I'm sorry for those things. At the point that I was able to see myself and recognize the wounding was also at the point where so much healing in our relationship started to happen. And it not only happened in our relationship between myself and my husband, but it happened with our children too. And I didn't just apologize to my children for the wounding, to my husband for the wounding that I did to him, but I also openly expressed to my children that I recognized that I had done a lot of wounding, not only to their dad, but to them also. And when that happened, it was a shift that happened in our household. But one of the reasons why my children needed to hear me say that I wronged their dad is for two reasons. One, my boys needed to know that that's not the type of woman that you want to marry. Number two, my daughters needed to know, because they've only known me and their dad their whole lives, that's as a woman, as a young lady, that's not how you handle a man's heart. And the way I was handling his heart was wrong. And I openly needed to say that in front of my children, because they had seen some things, they had heard some things, and they needed that acknowledgement. And so I am just thankful that, God gives back the years that the locust, the cankerworm, and the palmer worms have eaten, and to know that we are in such a much better place. But it is important to recognize the wounds you have caused as a woman. And it's important to ask for forgiveness, and it's important to ask, how can you make it right? And that's what I did. And so I think that when we follow that and we ask for forgiveness and we do our part, then I think it just makes it makes the environment better. It makes a man now be more trusting of, his heart with you. And listen, let me just shut up, because I could talk about this all day.
Well, let's just say we have time to unpack these types of things, because I know that women are listening and men are listening. Some are saying like, man, I wish my wife would, or I wish my woman would. I wish somebody would come and apologize, to me, because sometimes those wounds run deep. And Deb, you can attest, working in the church and in your environment, when men shut down, they say when a woman get quiet, oh Lord, when men shut down, that is a whole nother animal, almost a whole nother beast, if you will, because it's sort of like, oh, so you're just not going to do anything. Well, you seem to have it all, so why would I? And so how do we recover communication, relationship, trust when we have hurt, someone so deeply? And oftentimes men don't say when they're hurt. They just kind of check out.
You are so right. But I really think Charlotte hit it on the head. We have to learn how to acknowledge and own our part. The Bible talks about, there's this scripture that I thought about as Charlotte was talking. A wise woman builds her house, but a foolish woman tears her house down with her own hands. And that says a lot. It says a lot about how important it is for women to hold the appropriate space in the home. You've often heard that if mama not happy, ain't nobody happy. Well, if mama isn't holding and putting forth the right energy in the home, it's just going to be raggedy and torn up. And that's not the kind of experience you want in your marriage, for your children, because as Charlotte mentioned, they're watching you. So what do you do? How do you really manage pulling this together? Sometimes you need help, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes your own wounds will bleed over into the relationship and you don't even understand why you're yelling and screaming. You don't even understand why you want to hurt your partner because you're feeling hurt. You don't even know why you're acting in some ways. So sometimes you need to pull away and get some help for you. My sister, you need to pull away and get some help for you. When you understand that you've had trauma in your own family system that has impacted your life, and you're acting in these ways and you can't quite put your finger on it, go get some help to explore what could be causing your reactions to whatever's happening in your home. Number two, if there's a second thing, the family that prays together stays together. I really think there's something to that. Because when you're focused spiritually, you can hear the voice of God giving direction. And while I know that our whole audience may not be Christian, Dr. Jacquie did call me Rev. So, okay, here we go. So there is something about being spiritually aligned and being aligned with God and being able to hear the voice of God. I was trying to think of a different way to say that, but to hear the voice of God directing you. Sometimes, sis, the Lord will just say, shut up. Sometimes he'll just say, stop, right in the middle of where you are and what you're doing and what you're saying, because you've gone off the rails. The Bible talks about submission. And what we tend to overlook is the mutual submission that it talks about. So that thing has to go both ways. You have to be able to hear, and not just hear, but to understand. You have to learn how to understand his heart. One of the prayers I remember praying and writing even before I got married is, God, help fix me so I'm the woman for him. Fix him so he's the man for me. And in doing that, there is an understanding that has to occur about not just the persona of a man, but the heart of a man. And sometimes we, as women, we act as though we're just the ones with the heart. But our men have hearts too. They want to be encouraged too. They want to be esteemed and respected. In fact, the Bible says that's the thing that they need from us, our respect. So as we're exploring this, we have to remember that they have a heart too. And they need from us those things that fill that heart up, that makes that heart happy, that allows his heart to find a place of contentment where he's open and willing to share and not just broken and shut down. So sometimes even the therapy needs to go both ways. Sometimes you need to do some things together.
I respect that. I think that those things are important. I'm going to jump to break, because when we come back after the break, in addition to healing, we need to talk about how do we not only gain trust, but rebuild trust. I know there are a lot of young women out there. There are a lot of older women, some looking to get married for the first time, some looking to do it over again. But there's some pain that is there, that exists, that may have come from the fathers that we have had in our lives. And oftentimes we don't know how to deal with that. So we're going to unpack trust and what that means and how to be in the relationship that is meaningful and impactful and intentional in your life. We'll be back in a moment after the break.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Welcome back, everybody. And as you can tell, to balance these things in our lives, we have to have conversations with ourselves. We have to have conversations with people that we love. And we'll tell you, you have to have conversations with God, because oftentimes we don't know which direction to go. And we're listening to people who seemingly don't have it together themselves. But we at this show consider that we have ourselves pretty much together. So today we're helping you with your balanced living toolkit. Put things that help us, relate to how we deal with the men in our lives. So ladies, let's talk about that for a moment, because oftentimes when we've been wounded, when we hurt others, we've heard the phrase, hurting people hurt other people. And I think both of you have mentioned that we bring that layer and levels of baggage into the relationships that we want to have. I don't want to marry my dad or anybody like him. I'm going to marry somebody exactly like my dad because he's the best thing since sliced bread. But oftentimes we shield our people in our lives from so many things. So how do we build trust and establish that baseline? And I want to start in two areas. First, for young people. Say they met somebody in high school or in college, and then like young people, they flint over here and they flint over there. So trust is broken. And if they've seen their parents doing whatever parents do, then they have a tendency to say, no, I'm out. I don't want to be involved in anything that's going to break my heart, like I saw my mom and dad's heart broken. How do we lay a foundation for this current generation to build healthy relationships? What does that even look like if they're just starting out?
Woo, so listen here. This generation is really something. And actually, that question in and of itself, I mean, you have to think of the times in which we're living and the things that this particular generation has experienced over the course of the last even 10 years, right? I mean, they've experienced a pandemic, they've experienced, two different presidents and, just all the things. They've experienced so much, but even just with the whole pandemic situation and now they've become, we were people who didn't have cell phones, we didn't have computers, we didn't have all of these things. And so we were required to have interpersonal skills, right? Now our kids are on technology and they're doing all these things. They're meeting people on dating apps and things of that nature. And yet, even just the one-on-one communication to really even interface. One thing that we need to do with our children is we need to teach them how to interface with people in the physical and not just on their cell phones and things like that, because you start to teach and develop trust when you have time well spent, when you have time invested, not just because you were on your cell phone or anything like that. Because I mean, I can say anything that I want to say to you, like over my cell phone or over email, or you instead of calling me, we used to call each other like on our house phone on the landline, or go to a payphone and put a quarter in to have a conversation. Now you're like DMing me and I don't even know who you are, but you're like trying to get to know me through my DM. We need to go back to some of the quote unquote good old days and teach our children how how to have interpersonal skills to really be able to interface with each other. And then when it comes to the things that our kids have seen in their homes, in our homes with our, with their parents, or, with a one parent home or 2-parent home or whatever, we have to acknowledge the fact that, there are some things that you've seen or heard in our house that, just because your dad or your mom might be a certain way or have done certain things does not mean that the next person is going to treat you that way. But you're never going to really learn that until you have really spent time with somebody. And I always tell my kids, your friendship is something that is earned. Like one thing, I don't believe in, sending my kids to preschool and elementary school and being like, oh, here's your new friends because you're in a new class with people. No, these are people who you were in class with, and they only become your friends when you spend time with them and you're intentional with them and you do play dates with them and you hang out with them and all of these different things. But we have to do a good job of doing that because also we have seen our children grow up in a time. And yet, when the pandemic came, there were so many people who were working who now had to come home and they had to be teacher and they had to be at work and they had to do all these things. So even parents allowed their children to be babysat by video games and virtual learning and all of these things. And so there's some things that we just carried on over. But now it's okay to be that parent that said, yeah, I did allow this during this particular season. This is not working for us anymore. So now I'm just deciding to, we're going to have a conversation because I don't want you to feel like I'm a mom that's going rogue and taking your stuff. But what I am doing is saying, what, this is not working. And now we need to make a change and do something else. So that's what I have for that for now.
No, I think that that's very important. All of the ways in which we learn to communicate, and oftentimes problems in the home is because people don't know how to communicate. I think it's a lost art. We yell from upstairs, downstairs, and across the house, for people to come and do stuff. We don't physically go to them and talk to them and ask them. Deborah, how does communication fit into the grand scheme of relationship building? Because mom's conversations and father's conversations, they don't necessarily go the same way.
You are so very right. And I think that Charlotte brought in some really key points about this current generation and what they're accustomed to as it relates to communication. I was talking to my 35-year-old son, right? And he's a gamer. He's been a gamer all of his life. And he's just now recognizing that he needs to develop conversations and relationships with people face to face because he's been online so much that it's challenging for him to communicate face to face with people. Now, while he says that, I can say that I feel like he's a good communicator, and I've seen him and observed him with other people, and he does a good job. He just doesn't always think so. But it is so important to develop and nurture communication, whether that's in the home, in the work environment. You asked me about the difference between male and female communication. Moms and dads don't communicate the same way. Mom will repeat something over and over and over, the same request, but dad, he's going to say that thing one time, baby, and you better move. And so understanding that it's probably frustrating for dad to hear his wife have to repeat something over and over and over again before a child moves, but then for him to be able to step in and just articulate that thing one time, probably in less words, and have a response. But that's the authority of the different roles. But it's also how mom has been, how she's experienced communication in her own life as well. We are often much softer with our kids and in different environments. and sometimes that flows into work environments as well, but that's a whole nother thing. And so moms will take the softer route and give a chance, but dad is going to put his foot down the first time, and that's the standard. So even when we're communicating with one another, again, for women, we're going to say many more words than men do. But I think the key is, are you listening to what I am saying? Are we able to check in and say, okay, this is what I heard you say, and not just take a word or a phrase and run with that, but to actually respect one another enough to actually listen to what's being said. And then after you heard it and you're clear, can I say that one more time? And you're clear, then move forward. But take the time to make sure that as you communicate, that you really are clear, because we come from different backgrounds, we come from different modes of operation, and so our communication is going to be different, and we have to learn to listen to each other and not assume that a person is the same way as some other person that you've encountered. Charlotte mentioned that as it relates to our kids and their friends and what they've experienced, and then thinking that, oh, that's just how people are. No, people are different. And so then that means you have to be open enough to hear a person. And when it comes to dads, again, I'm going to go to the heart, right? You have to be open enough, have taken the time to hear his heart.
I'm just sitting here reflecting on what both of you have said, because in one scenario, I can hear, child, don't you hear your mama talking to you? Because dads usually step in like that. I watched my grandfather do things like that. I'm like, is your grandmother not talking to you? Why are you still sitting there? And all of a sudden, like Deb said, that agitation steps in, because there's a certain amount of respect that men say children should have for their mother. And it's like, oh, so we're just not respecting people today. Is that what we're doing? And so it's like all of those things seem to come into play when we talk about how kids communicate, who their friends are, how they develop their friends. And then I think there's some stress for children or young adults in not becoming their parent, especially for young boys. Like, I don't want to be like my dad, whether dad was present or dad was missing. When we come back after the break, I want to have this conversation to help our fathers. And this is not us. First of all, let me tell you who the group is. The fathers that we want to help when we come back after the break are those who are raising kids alone. Contrary to popular belief, there are men who are single fathers, and we'll be back with that after the break.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
Welcome back, everybody. And as you can tell, learning how to build family, build relationship, some of it does hinge on who the men are in our lives. But there are some men who are out there raising daughters, raising sons alone for a variety of reasons. Some men have requested custody of their kids because of life situations. Other men have inherited kids and they are taking care of nieces and nephews. And there are some men whose wives have passed on to glory, whether it was through cancer, through heart attack, through stroke, or through the pandemic. And they are raising these amazing children on their own. Let's talk about tips that we can give to dads who are out there on their own raising children. Hey, ladies, I mean, that in itself, when you think about dads having to learn menstruation, dads having to learn how to comb hair, dads having to deal with dating and teaching children how to drive. That's a lot for men to take on when the woman in the household has been the primary person to take care of all of those things. What does that look like in ways of helping men who are doing the single father parenting thing, keep it together? I won't say get it together, because, we've all seen men who can't comb hair and be like, dude, can I recommend somebody, to you to help you with your kid? But I think that these are some sensitive times, especially for men who are, either just in it and are learning to be single fathers. What are some things that single fathers can learn to do?
So I would tell a single father the same thing that I would tell a single mother, and that is find your people, find a support system, because you're going to need it, especially if you're a father who is raising girls. You're going to need somebody who's and we thank God for, YouTube University and all those wonderful places online and whatnot. But you're going to need a woman who is not trying to, hook, line, and sink you, but will really help you to be the feminine part of what your daughters will need, but also the feminine part of what your sons will need too. And you also have to be honest with that. And not only that, but man, in the world that we live in, you have to pray for a good support system. Because I say it all the time, it doesn't take a village to raise a child. It takes the right village. And so my prayer is that for single fathers, that they would really, really pray and ask for discernment about the women who they want to be a part of their support system when it comes to their children. Because not everybody, as women, we're like, oh, all men don't have good intentions, but all women don't have good intentions either. And so really finding that support system. And one thing that you said, Dr. J, is, referring you when you see a dad out here in these, parenthood streets and his daughter's hair is looking a mess, gently say to him, hey, sir, I know somebody. Where do you live? I may know somebody who can, a hair salon or somewhere that you might be able to take your daughter to. And, we don't have to know everybody's financial situation, but sometimes, if it's somebody that and even if it's somebody that you don't know, because, I'm always giving people money that I don't know, whatever, but you can say, hey, here's $50 or whatever to take your daughter to get her hair washed and blown out and all the things, or whatever, put in some ponytails and, learn some classes or whatever. But we can do that. We should be helpers of each other's fathers. There are father groups. Find a single dad's group and dads who are raising daughters and raising their children on their own. I'm going to tell you, we don't talk about it a lot, but like you said, there are fathers who are raising their kids alone. And the first time I ever met a man who was a single father was back in the 80s when we moved into our neighborhood with my mom, and he was raising his two boys. And it was like an anomaly to me because I only saw single women raising their children. But to see how he raised his boys and nurtured them and loved them, and even the women that came into to their lives, and the one that he finally married and became their stepmom, it was such a beautiful thing to see. But they didn't always have a stepmother, and somebody who really loved and endeared them. And so I just think finding a support system, finding avenues out there where you can really get the help that you really need for your children.
That's so important. She said finding the right village, and oftentimes it's not easy. And so men struggle, as you stated, sometimes with finding support groups, and then they just, isolate themselves, which means then their kids become isolated, which leads to different types of social awkwardness. And back to our previous block, where kids just don't know how to communicate, because IRL is real. In real life is not always easy. Deb, I'm sure you have something to add to that.
Absolutely. I think that men have to find the balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the strong male figure to the loving, doting father. Where's the balance there? Sometimes when we are the sole provider for our children, we go overboard one way or the other. And so sometimes we're just so strict and stringent with it that we forget to relax a little bit and show them how much we love them and coddle a little bit. I think there's value in finding that kind of balance. I think that being able to speak positively into the life of your children. Everything can't be about, we got to get it done, right? So there needs to be the balance where there's some fun elements to the process. Yes, it's a lot of hard work raising children on your own. And there's so many things that have to be done and managed and schedules to keep. And yes, you should have a schedule, but find some fun for you as a family. And then on the other side of that, make sure that you pay attention to your own self-care, your own wellness, because if you're the sole provider for this child or these children, what happens when you're not well? And so you want to make sure that you're taking care of you in the middle of this process of even if you're learning how to take care of them, it's so important. And again, I keep going back to that word balance. Learn how to practice patience. Children are growing and learning as they go. And sometimes that takes on a different look for one child from the other child. Which is why I only had one biological child, because you never know how that other one is going to come out. But when you have the different personalities that you have to deal with in your children, understand that there are some qualities that the older child may have that the younger child doesn't, and vice versa, and take each child as they are and love them from that perspective of who they are. And you'll figure out what works for each child, because they're different and they want to know that you love them for them and not just because they act like this other one. So it's important, again, in all of the things, to find the balance in how you raise your children and also how you take care of you in the middle of that process.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Because I think it's important to say this one particular thing right here. When fathers are co-parenting, like if they are single fathers, whether you're a single father or you're a father who is married and all the things, one thing that I want to challenge the women, the moms of their children to do is allow a man to be a man and allow a father to be a father. And learn to do that early on, like out of the womb, because what happens is, when we have children, whether we're birthing children or children are the wombs, are from the womb of our heart or whatever, when they're small, our children are small, they're frail, they're all these things, they're very much attached to us. And what happens is that we, engulf these kids when they're little. And because we do that, it doesn't give our husbands or our co-parent the opportunity to step in and kind of take the reins. And so it's like, you've been doing, as a woman, you've been doing all this mothering and parenting. And then when the kids get older, you're like, okay, well, it's your turn. Well, you didn't even give him an opportunity to be a father when the baby came out the womb. Like, you didn't even like the fact that he was holding him in the football position, or her in the football position, because you thought he was going to drop the baby. Well, he loves the baby just as much as you. And so if you don't give a man the opportunity to be a father early on, then yes, you're going to be tired. Yes, you're going to be exhausted. Yes, you're going to be yelling. Yes, you're going to have the whams, which is the what about me's. You're going to have all of that because you took on so much responsibility that wasn't all your responsibility to take on in the first place. So, one of my biggest advice is, pieces of advice is start out how you're going to hold out. If you don't want to be doing all of the cooking for you and your children in your household and all of the cleaning and all that, allow a man to be a man and do his role in being a father.
I think that those are very valid points. Everything that you said, it makes completely good sense. Before we go to break and I give my reflection, what is the one thing that you all would say not to do as a father, Charlotte?
As a father, don't be a man who is a phantom father. And what I mean by that is don't be somebody who is just in the house, but you're not, you're physically there, but you're not, your presence is not there. Don't be a man who is just like, well, I'm a provider, and so I don't need to show up. You still need to show up. Your physical presence matters just like your provision.
I like that, Deb.
That was good. I think another thing would be fathers. Your children need to see your love as much as they need to see your firm hand guiding and reprimanding. So in your child's life, allow them to get to know you and the fact that you really do love them. And sometimes that means saying no. You can't always be the good guy and mom the bad guy. So, right. But allow your child to know your love.
I love that. When we come back, I will give my reflection after the break.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back, everyone. And as you can tell, faith, family, and fatherhood has so many different nuances, but its intention is designed to discipline us, nurture us, love us, and to let us know how we as individuals, as we grow, can make decisions that allow our lives to be filled with intention and purpose. Fathers, we love you and we care for you, and we're so excited to be celebrating you this month. As Father's Day approaches and the rest of the month, know that here at A Balanced Life, we give our regards and our hats off to you. Bye now.